Good morning and welcome to Anxiety in the Workplace. I'm Danielle Wink, event coordinator for the New Jersey Business and Industries Association. With us today is Dr. Arnold Williams from RWJBarnabas Behavioral Health Center. Dr. Williams is a psychiatrist and medical director at the RWJBarnabas Behavioral Health Center in Toms River, ABPN board certified in psychiatry and a fellow of the American and New Jersey Psychiatric Association. He oversees the Behavioral Health Center psychiatrist while providing expert clinical care to patients in an inpatient setting. Dr. Williams has been with RWJBarnabas Health System for 12 years and is a true mental health and patient advocate. Additionally, the Behavioral Health Center offers an intensive outpatient program and also has a specialized generic unit complete. In addition to the Behavioral Health Center, RWJBarnabas Health has an extensive service line for mental health and addiction services throughout New Jersey. A few housekeeping matters before we get started. Today's program is being recorded and will be emailed to you by Monday, May 8th. Please take a moment to change your view from gallery to speaker. This will help you engage with the presentation in the best way possible. If you're not sure how to do that, move your mouse to the upper right corner and click the bottom that says View, then select Speaker. We'll also put the directions in the chat. I'd like to draw your attention to the questions and answer box. Dr. Williams will be happy to take your questions at the end, so get them in as they come to you via the question and answer box. If you have any trouble viewing or hearing during this presentation, don't forget you will automatically be receiving a recording. So you have to sign out, you can rewatch the recording. So now, without further ado, Dr. Williams, take us away.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's see, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, thanks everyone for coming out. I appreciate the introduction. This has been a pleasure in terms of preparation. I just want to give a random warning here. Because there are some technical things going on my end, I'm not blaming anyone. I am not disconnecting out of rage. I'm not quitting or anything like that. If there is any disconnect, it'll be temporary and I'll be right back on. But I will make sure that I keep your time in mind. I know it's very valuable, and hopefully we all learn something from this. I am very lighthearted. I enjoy having conversations. So if there are questions that come up, we'll try and do most of them at the end. But if there's something directly related to what I'm talking about in the moment, and I feel it's appropriate, I will gladly answer. Okay, so you see the initial slide, anxiety in the workplace, learn, equip, and empower, because we always need those types of positive phrases. So I'm going to do this a little differently than what you're used to. I'm going to say thank you first, because as I said, I know your time is valuable. I also know that these types of topics are the things that may not always come up in regular discourse. So if people feel seen, if people feel like there are things that they rather not say directly, that's totally understandable. We're all in this together and we're all here to learn together. So the fact that you're willing to take the time to do this, hopefully you come away with some ideas to think on. Perfect example. It's not meant to be something that you learn absolutely everything all at once, but we'll keep going with this. All right. So first of all, basic definition of anxiety. Feeling of worry, nervousness, unease. Pretty much, if you've ever heard the term someone is nervous or you're feeling like you're getting stage fright or whatever, those types of terms. If I'm still here, they all usually mean the same thing. So the whole point of this is we all know in general what anxiety is. And although I got it straight from the dictionary, You could also do a Google search. There's nothing wrong with knowing about this. It's just that it's incredibly simplistic. So for someone like me who has done, 4 years of medical school and then another 4 years of general psychiatry training, and if I wanted to do another fellowship, that's another 1 or 2 years. So we get a lot of experience dealing with things like this. This, once again, I am directly taking. I don't believe in hiding things or plagiarism. This is directly from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual onto how to make one of these diagnoses. So I went with an example of generalized anxiety disorder. And you can see it's a bit more detailed as to what's going on. It gives the, the criteria in general of, some of the things that we mention, feeling on edge, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, the physical symptoms, the fact that it impairs your function, and how long it's been lasting. Because I want to make a distinction here. What we talk about when someone has anxiety in the moment is different from what we're talking about when someone has an anxiety disorder. We may not always have the language clear, so the sooner that we get that clear, the better. And that's my job. My job is to make sure I know at least what a person is telling me, because that way we know how we can deal with it. And also at the end, that also is very important, where it says, if there is something else that is a diagnosis, you could certainly have anxiety as a part of it. It doesn't just immediately say, okay, if I have anxiety, therefore I have anxiety disorder. We don't have to jump to conclusions about those sorts of things based on just one symptom or one presentation. So this is a lot of information here. And I wanted to let you know at the end of this, I hope everybody remembers every single word on this slide. Just kidding. Just kidding. The whole point of this, because I know when people are motivated and dedicated to learning, a lot of times they feel like these slides, which will be available afterwards, they feel like they need to know every detail all at once. And if they miss something, somehow that means something went wrong. That's not the case. This is meant as an introduction. So from that perspective, I wanted people to know that that was one example of the detail that professionals have to go through to make diagnoses. So we're dedicated to that. We don't expect lay people to do that, and you shouldn't necessarily do that for yourself. Don't go to Dr. Google and just look for everything, because honestly, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you look for something, you'll certainly find it. There are lots of different anxiety disorders, and it's the most common mental health condition in the world. It says 30%. I'll be very honest with you. I think that that actually is a low number, depending on what a person has gone through for their entire lifetime. But for those of you that haven't experienced it, good for you. I doubt we have people like that in the audience, but hey, that's fair. Because anxiety itself is not a disorder. Even if it doesn't classify as a disorder, that doesn't mean you can't have anxiety. All right, so to get to the basics of what anxiety is really, it is our way as living beings to survive. So you can think, if you've ever seen nature shows or things like that, and you have, an herbivore, you have, something that is mostly eating plants. Well, you also have carnivores. You have the predators, the ones that eat other animals. Well, it would be very silly and, pretty much against their survival if when a predator is around, that animal didn't actually, run or hide or fight back or something. So they actually have those quick responses. If you've ever seen a deer and the way their head perks up, the way they start to move, the way they run, once one deer moves, the other one moves because they know something's going on. There is danger. That is a natural reaction. That is not something that requires extensive levels of thought. Well, guess what? We have those physical reactions too. And it's good that we have them. For example, if we're crossing the street and you see a car coming, you want to make sure that you don't get hit. Hopefully the car stops or moves out of the way, but usually your body is going to do something that it thinks is going to be protective of you. So we want to have these types of reactions. So the point is, it's in the moment of whatever it is that's considered a danger. Your body responds to it thanks to your nervous system. It is still something that involves your brain. And after that happens, you're going to have a cool down period. Whatever those physical responses are, and many people recognize them. Your heart beats a little faster, your muscles are tense, your breathing picks up. All of those things happen and then they soon resolve. That's a typical response, and that is something that your body is very easily able to deal with. And I also want to point out that although we call it anxiety sometimes as a negative, let's remember, there are things that we anticipate, there are things that we enjoy doing, and we can get similar responses to that. So I don't want it just to be a negative thing. It can certainly be a positive thing. It's the type of thing that if you are knowing that you're going to do something, like give a presentation to a bunch of people that are willing to learn from you, then it can actually produce some great responses. Not that I'm calling myself out or anything. So from that perspective, it's not only something that you shouldn't avoid, it's something that you may want because it allows you to do more than if you just didn't have that level of energy. The other thing about this is sometimes these responses can kick in even if you didn't think that you were in the mood or you didn't have the energy or things like that, because who knows, heaven forbid you're sleeping. Once again, to go back to that original example, if you're an animal that's sleeping and a predator is nearby, but they make a sound, I would like to think that you want to wake up so that you could get away or fight or prepare whatever it is that you need to do. So we want that even in situations where, although it's inconvenient, we still know that it would be beneficial for us to respond. So how does this apply to us as human beings who, let's see, I know I'm wearing clothes, I hope you are too, but I'm not looking at anyone's cameras. You're in a structure usually that is protective of you. You don't have any immediate predators towards you. So what exactly is it that I need right now? Well, that's part of the issue, because it can still be positive for you in the modern work environment, even if you don't have all of those natural barriers. So if there is something that's coming up, you have a deadline, you have something that's important to you, and someone reminds you of it, and let's say you happen to forget, oh my goodness, I need to get to work right away. Okay, now you have the motivation to do it, even if you weren't originally thinking about it, all because you got what we call a stimulus. It's something that your body is going to react to, or in this case, your brain is reacting to. The fact that we have our own thoughts and we plan and organize way more than a lot of other animals do in different ways is what makes a big difference. So anxiety, or that physical response and action, can happen even if we don't perceive it as a physical threat. So we have actually one up on a lot of other species. We are able to do those things and respond to things that no other species would consider to respond to. And it's a wonderful thing when it works in our favor. So the fact that we all have jobs, the fact that we all have things that we know we need to accomplish on a daily basis, be it at home, be it at work, be it with our friends. These are all wonderful things. I want to make that clear. Anxiety is not a completely negative thing until it's not. And now we get into the other side of it, because some of you are saying, well, Dr. Williams, it's easy for you to say that this is a positive thing because it's motivational and there are things we can do and all, and I get through the day and I'm surviving, I'm safe, et cetera, et cetera. The thing is, I noticed that it doesn't shut off. It keeps going well after the original, like I said, stimulus, the original event happens. So it's not going away. I still can feel my heart racing, or I still at times get short of breath, and I notice that my face gets flushed or I'm sweating, even when nothing else is happening. I even tell myself, what are you doing? Things are okay. And I still have that response. So the physical symptoms may be an issue. Maybe it's not even the physical part. Maybe it's the fact that you're worried about threats even when the threats aren't there. And rather than it being a situation of maybe brief preparation for things that are concerning you, it's something that your brain will not shut off. You will continue to have those thoughts. You're constantly planning. Planning is wonderful. It allows us to accomplish more than if we didn't plan at all. But at the same time, plan without action is lame. So that can create its own situation and leads to its own set of emotion. And then also there's this whole point of, well, I know you just said, Dr. Williams, that these things are positive, but I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't like how I feel when that happens. And in that case, what is something that I can do to not have this happen at all? Well, for many people, they make the connection. If this is considered a threat and my body and brain are considering it a threat, then I guess I just need to make sure I don't get exposed to it at all and it all goes away. And in the short term, once again, if you were looking to avoid something trying to attack you or something that is, falling near you, that's a wonderful idea. The thing is, there are many times where it's actually a part of your daily life or a part of your routine enough that avoidance is actually not practical. So when that's the case, now we could see how this combination of things can make it a problem, not just for you, because I recognize most people have the concern about anxiety for themselves, but anxiety can also affect the people around you in terms of your interactions, your behaviors, and all the things that happen around you that you may not be considering in the time period, as if I'm trying to give you something else to worry about. All right. So, before I immediately go into the next section, and as you can tell, I like talking as opposed to just using slides. If I wanted to put everything on slides, I just write, I'd write the article or write the book. Okay. I enjoy talking about this. A lot of times people ask me, yeah, but what does it come from? Because yeah, you're talking about your brain and nervous system and all that, but what does it do? Okay. The whole point of this is we have a very special part of our nervous system that kind of short circuits. It goes quicker than our typical normal thoughts go, and it goes to certain organs in our body. One of them, for example, is the adrenal glands. They're right above our kidneys. And what those do is they produce certain hormones. Hormones are special chemicals that give signals to the other organs in our body. And they go through our bloodstream usually. And the whole point of those hormones, they can be cortisol, they can be adrenaline or epinephrine, noradrenaline, norepinephrine, all those things together determine just what type of response we're going to get. It can affect our digestive system. There's a certain phrase I'm not going to say to, insult anybody, no expletives, but scared blankless is a perfect example of that. There's a reason why that term came up. It's because it affects our digestion. You're not trying to just eat a very relaxed meal when you are on high alert. It also affects your heightened awareness. You're not going to immediately sleep when you have these things coursing through your body. You also are going to have some thoughts about, well, if I need the blood to flow where it needs to go so that my muscles can move as quickly, that's why your heart races. That's why your breathing changes. You have to make sure that you don't overheat either, because heaven forbid you're outside and there's some sort of danger happening, then that's why you start sweating. That's why you get flushed, because your blood vessels dilate and they need to have that go somewhere. So all of these things together are really what's happening under the surface. And it's not as if you're purposely trying to make it happen. That's another part of it. And there are consequences if this system keeps going on overdrive and doesn't shut off after the stimulus is given. All right, so thank you for this, thank you for all this information, Dr. Williams, about all this background stuff. So what does this have to do with me personally? Okay, well, the thing is, everything you do during the day gets impacted by your brain. Surprising, right? But although anxiety itself can classify itself as a mood, it certainly can impact other parts of your mood because it is a very dynamic system. So, for example, if there were things that you wanted to accomplish, but you felt your anxiety was blocking it, it can lead to frustration and anger. A lot of anxiety has to do with the idea of what I don't understand. In other words, there are things that I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to anticipate. Like, what if? What's the next thing that's going to happen? And the unknown is one of those big motivators from a psychological standpoint for anxiety. The more unknowns they are, the greater your anxiety will be. Well, if anxiety is wondering what could happen or what are the worst things that can happen, depression is when you think it's already happened. So maybe your own experiences previously, in addition to leading the anxiety of maybe this will happen again, you can also lead to your own type of talk and emotion of this is definitely going to happen again and is going to be bad. So that can lead to depression. There are many other variabilities to this. Everybody here has lived their own lives, so I'm sure they have their own examples for themselves if you think back to it. Obviously, if it's too traumatic, you don't have to do that in the moment. But I'm just saying, everybody I think can really relate to the idea that this can impact a lot of things in our life when it comes to mood. Also, in terms of what I said, motivation-wise, it can be great in terms of getting action done. But heaven forbid you overthink. There's a term for it, paralysis by analysis. You think and rethink, and you're always wondering if what you're doing is the right thing. So for some people, they actually never get started with what they wanted to do in the first place, which is a waste of time. Or as they're doing something, they're not doing it at the pace that they want because everything has to be perfected. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about personalities per se. If anybody has questions about that, I certainly can, look to incorporate that because we're going to have a lot of open time and I can keep going with it. But the point is, it definitely can impact workflow. And that's why the next thing I say, working harder to work less. It means that the amount of effort you have to do for each task, because your body is already in overdrive, it's the equivalent of, let's say, I used to say about car gears, and I'm not even a car person, but the best way I can describe it is, if you're on the highway and you're going 120 miles an hour, you're going to burn through the gas tank pretty quick. Well, imagine you've already gotten down to almost your gas tank on E, and yet you're looking, and for some reason, with machines, they don't have the choice. When they're out of gas, they're out of gas. They just stop. But with human beings and most biological mechanisms, we somehow find a way, don't we? So in other words, your body is saying, all the signals are saying, you need to stop. You need to shut down. And yet your body itself is still saying, nope, we know we need to be on this high alert. We're going to keep going no matter what. And it just keeps going and going until there's some intervention one way or another. It could be the person's own behavior. It could be other people helping them out, whatever it is. So a person may feel like they're putting in a lot of physical effort, but not getting exactly the results that they want. And it doesn't just have to be physical. I'm also talking about mental labor as well. So, you can definitely notice if something like that is happening. So let's say that you're at work, you were daydreaming a little bit, just, brainstorming something. You decide that you're going to work on whatever it is you were going to work on now, but then you remember, oh, wait, did I forget to do this? And now your brain just goes on its own trek while you were trying to do what you originally did, and you just lost time. So that's a perfect example of it. And the next bullet that I have actually works into one of the questions that just got asked. Contributes to other medical conditions. Which medical condition does it affect? Yes. In other words, it can affect just about everything. So the specific question was, can it manifest itself into migraines or nausea or other symptoms? Absolutely. It definitely can affect the gut. So we know that because it's directly connected with your digestion when it comes to the immediate responses that you have. So yes, it can lead to nausea. It can lead to a lot of upset stomach, irritability. It can lead to ulcers if we're sticking with the digestive side. In terms of migraine, in terms of headaches, especially if you're already prone to migraines, you're more likely to have them and have them more frequently. If we're talking about tension headaches, though, what's a tension headache? A tension headache is when the muscles around your neck and your head become so tense in and of themselves, or you grind your teeth a lot when you're under stress. Those are the things that can lead to headaches. So that's also a very common thing. If a person is already exhibiting, let's say, what we call pre-hypertension, or they're on the border of having blood pressure that's too high, then this can certainly exacerbate it. If a person has problems with pain, then this exacerbates that pain. Although in the short run, and I repeat, in the short run, if there is a stressor enough where a person has to overcome that, then the person may notice that they don't focus on the pain as much. But the second that stressor is gone, then once again, we get into this, like I said, bad feedback system of, your body's in overdrive and the pain actually comes back worse than it was before. So yes, it can definitely affect a lot of medical conditions. As a matter of fact, the number one person that is going to come up with the possible differential diagnosis, differential meaning one of many possible diagnoses, is your primary care provider, your doctor that sees you for all of your general things, that does your yearly checkup, that does your screening exams, all of that. They're the one most likely to pick it up, because they may notice that you have some things that are a little off, and you're describing some things that are, that are bothering you, but it doesn't necessarily fit into one neat box. And often they're the ones that encounter this from a healthcare perspective and start to direct what can help. So yes, absolutely, this affects pretty much everything that you can think of. It can have an impact. Okay, so what about, I mentioned before with these diagnoses, yeah, there are many different types. I gave the specific thing for generalized anxiety just to let you know that the criteria are always extensive. So any of the ones that I have listed on this slide here, these are also very extensive in terms of their diagnoses. They have specific time frames, exactly what those specific symptoms are, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't want to get bogged down into the minutia of that. I just wanted to give you guys an idea. If you hear these things, be it from a healthcare provider or you read about these things, that this is what they're talking about, okay? With regards to that, we could have a specific phobia, meaning, and I give, very, pointed ideas just in case anybody was wondering. If I don't want to talk over anybody's heads. Specific phobia means, can everyone still hear me? Just want to make sure. Had one of those delays again. Okay, good. So I gave the example, thanks for the thumbs up. I gave the example of a spider, which is arachnophobia. People have heard that. And no, I'm not going to go through every single Latin and Greek example of what the different phobias are. It can be heights, it can be blood, it can be, often they are based on, to go back, way back to our original point, to biological things. And therefore, they may have had some protective purpose. But unless you're an entomologist, meaning someone that deals with insects, spider thing isn't always relevant. So these are very, very situation focused, and therefore you may not have any other type of anxiety, but the second that that thing comes up, everybody learns it. It's the easiest to diagnose because the person usually can't hide it. They just have that immediate reaction, especially if it's not something that they deal with on a regular basis. So for those of you, I wasn't trying to make fun of you. I wasn't trying to incite anything, but yes, this is actually the most common, and if you have it, it's okay. We're in this together. I actually had this for a long, long time, not just spiders, but almost, actually mine was even wider. It was arthrophobia, meaning pretty much all arthropods. So I didn't like going to Red Lobster, for example. Anyway, to get back to, talking about everyone. Social anxiety, and I gave the example. I'm not doing that intentionally, but for whatever reason, my presentation works better when my camera is off for my face. I have no problem with my camera being on, but for those of you out there, you know who you are. You like sitting in the back. You like to be the wallflower. You don't necessarily want to talk to people because you're worried about how people see you, or you worry that something's going to go wrong or you'll say the wrong thing, or just being the idea of public speaking really gets you scared. All of that. Let me make it clear. I've seen you. I know who you are. And I don't mean that in a paranoid way. What I'm saying is you're also very common when it comes to this type of disorder. So much so that maybe certain people on this call, maybe some people doing this presentation may have had this diagnosis, not to disclose anything, although I'm fully open about who I am and what I do. I actually love this stuff now. So believe it or not, things can totally turn around depending on how you view things. Panic disorder. Boy, oh boy, when people first have these, it's one of those things that, once again, your primary may come in, but a lot of emergency room docs see this one because a person may say, you know what, I think I'm having a heart attack, or I think I'm having, an asthma attack, even though I got over asthma a long time ago when I was a kid. They don't know what's going on. They may not even be able to identify the physical symptoms. But they know that something is wrong. They feel like they're going to die, or they feel like everything is falling apart and the world is collapsing, whatever it is. In the moment, they know they need some attention. And for those who are not immediately aware of it or are not trained in it, it is very difficult to tell the difference. Psychiatrists sometimes aren't able to identify it immediately. Other doctors may not be able to identify it immediately. And that's okay, because you'll still get the attention, you'll still get the medical and mental health evaluation to determine what's going on. The point is, it is real. What's happening to you is real. It just may not be in the way that you were anticipating. So no, they may not be treating you for a heart attack. No, they may not give you medication to, put you on platelet thinning drugs for a stroke, because it's not necessary, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be addressed. It just needs to be addressed a different way. And as a matter of fact, to really get meta with this, anxiety about having a panic attack can become its own situation, and that's where we get panic disorder. If you have one panic attack and it goes away, totally fine. If you're having random panic attacks and you're actually getting anxiety over the idea of having a panic attack, and you're avoiding things that may cause a panic attack, that's panic disorder. And once again, very common. We already went through pretty much generalized anxiety. Maybe you don't fit in one of these specific boxes, but you definitely have those symptoms, and they seem to appear more days than they don't. And it's been going on for months now. Okay, there you go. You have it. Good, good news. You've been living with it, so that means you'll survive. And I don't say that lightly, because sometimes people think I'm not going to be able to survive this. And while it can have negative effects on your health, you certainly will survive, and you can get better. So I just gave that, general phrase. Separation anxiety. This is more common with children, but it certainly can happen in adults. And it's what it sounds like. For those of you who have had children or have family members that are young, especially, above an age that you would expect it in terms of stranger danger, the idea that people get incredibly attached. And the second that, and in all honesty, you can see it more in pets, although I am not an expert in that field, but I can tell you the number of dogs that I've had in my life where it seems like the second that you're away, it's as if you disappeared off the face of the earth, never to be seen again. And in a way, it's good for us, because when we come back after work or whatever, it's like, oh, wow. Oh, right. You're my hero. I thought you had vanished, but you've returned. You survived. How did you do that? Now, that's obviously a tongue-in-cheek example, but the point being, you get the anxiety symptoms because you feel like you're in danger, because the protections that you're supposed to have, or the safety net that you're supposed to have, is no longer there. And if that's the case, then what's going to happen to me? And that, that's something that can be debilitating. And although it can be its own diagnosis, it can be folded in, especially with separation anxiety and especially with panic disorder. Agoraphobia, which, once again, because it has phobia in it, yes, it's kind of sort of a specific phobia, but it's much more broad. And I literally say that because the idea of being in spaces that are too wide open, the whole point is you lack control. Anything can happen at any time. People like this have a lot of difficulty being outdoors. And also, if they don't have an itinerary, or if they don't know where they're going to be moment to moment, it really stunts their ability to do things throughout the day. So, the opposite end, of course, is claustrophobia, but everybody seems to understand that idea in the moment. And that, once again, is a common specific phobia. But agoraphobia can impact so many other ways. That's why it ended up being broken out into pretty much its own diagnosis. So all of these things together, and this is not an exhaustive list, these are just some of the major ones that are most common. All of these things together can have a huge impact on how we see the world, and how others see us, and how we interact with each other. So if you're applying these things to work, okay, specific phobia may not have that big of an impact unless your job is really specific to what that problem is. But social anxiety, if you have to deal with things with giving presentations or having interactions in meetings, if you're in sales and you have a very client-facing job that you didn't expect because everyone's short-staffed and they're asking you to fill in and it's unexpected, or if you feel like there are certain parts of the building where you work because that's the last time you had a panic attack and you just avoid that area, but you can't tell anybody why, so you try and work around it. Or, of course, the generalized anxiety thing. And I'm not going to lie, and I don't like this, but I know there's sometimes a stigma where people appear to be nervous about certain things and they get the reputation like, oh, don't bother her with that. She can't handle it, or he can't handle it, or whatever, because they're just going to get nervous about it. And in theory, people are trying to do you a favor saying, I know you don't like this, so I'm going to not put it on your plate. Meanwhile, perhaps your point is, wow, I noticed maybe they're not valuing my work because I'm not getting what I used to. And it can create some impact in what you're doing on a regular basis. So all of this is relevant to our day-to-day lives. And I want to make sure that people don't get marginalized because of it, or think that they're being marginalized, when in reality, it's so many people. It's so common. And yes, there is definitely more, and more than what's on this slide. So I mentioned substance-induced anxiety disorder. Too much of a good thing or too little of a bad thing. What am I talking about? So what you put into your body makes a big difference with everything in life, okay? Having a proper diet and watching what you do in terms of supplements is really important. I know fully well, and I am not going to deny this, I need a cup of coffee to start my day. And that is good. I appreciate it. It brightens me up. I'm able to enjoy things more, all of that. That's not a problem. Having multiple cups of coffee throughout the day after 4 p.m. And wondering why you're so tightly wound and people are noticing it, yeah, that might have a huge impact on your level of heightened alertness and how your body's responding to it. So that's a very common one. If you are a smoker and you have gotten to the point where you're smoking a pack a day, well, we know smoking is bad. I am not here to berate you. I am not here to insult you. But having said that, if you've noticed that your body, because there are certain receptors that nicotine attaches to, they're literally called nicotinic receptors, and they're a part of your central nervous system as well, they impact when they're not firing the way they used to when you're smoking. They can lead to increased anxiety and irritability. So I'm not saying smoke to avoid anxiety. That is not my point. My point is, if you do have a smoking issue, please get it addressed so that ultimately you're going to get through that wave of anxiety that you anticipate. But in addition to that, when I talk about substances, number one thing that people think of when it comes to anxiety, if you've had a stressful day on the job, many people, not everyone, but many people will say, you know what, let's go out, let's have a few drinks. Alcohol. Alcohol is one of those things that is what we call anxiolytic. It's a short-term anxiolytic. What does that mean? Reducing anxiety. There's no question about that for many people. And having one drink or making sure that things are in moderation, I'm not here to shame anybody. Having said that, alcohol in the long run and alcohol after its initial effect can be a depressant and is a disinhibitor. What do those two things mean? A depressant is exactly what it sounds like. Many people do get depressed related to how much alcohol they're having. For some people, it's dose dependent. The more alcohol they have, the more depressed they get. For some people, it doesn't matter. Any amount of alcohol, they may get rid of the temporary anxiety, but they almost guarantee themselves that they're going to have more depression. In addition to that, if a person does have a problem with alcohol, then when they stop drinking, then they start getting anxiety, which feeds back on itself because the way they get rid of the anxiety, drink more alcohol. And therefore, you can develop a problem that way. But that's even more serious because if a person does that when it comes to alcohol, then there's a good chance that they're developing something called tolerance. Tolerance means you need more and more to produce the same result. And if that's happening, then heaven forbid you're used to a certain amount of alcohol and don't drink it. Forget the anxiety, even though I know you would experience it. Some people go through withdrawal. Withdrawal can be a fatal thing. It can lead to seizures. It definitely impairs your ability to think. That's what disinhibition is. It means that the filter that we all have, the things that we know we shouldn't say at work, the things that we really bite our tongue on, or thoughts that we have that we know are just fleeting thoughts and don't need any other further consideration, well, that goes out the window. And now you start saying things that you wouldn't have said otherwise, but they're still your thoughts and they're still your responsibility. So there's a lot of problems that can happen from that. And there are other substances, stimulants, some people know Ritalin if they've had ADHD, things like that. And some illicit drugs, I'm not going to go into detail about that can directly affect not just anxiety, but mood as a whole. And then I mentioned anxiety due to medical conditions. So when I say, how's your thyroid, that's an example. The most common thing that people think of when they hear something about their thyroid, which is one of the organs that's, in the base of your neck that regulates how much energy you have and how your body processes that energy throughout the day. Most people think of hypothyroid, meaning it's not as active as it should be. Those people are tired. They usually gain weight. They, just feel like they want to sleep all the time. They get cold very easily, that sort of thing. There is the other side to that. A medical condition could be leading to more anxiety where your thyroid is too active, meaning that you actually are constantly hot and you have the air conditioner running all throughout winter. I'm not even making that up. One of the doctors that was a person that was supervising me during my training, he was notorious for this, and he did have a hyperactive thyroid. That's how he found out. But that's just one example of one medical condition. I'm going to throw out a term here. There's a term called psychosomatic. There's even a subspecialty in psychiatry for it, one that I've been very interested in. And the term itself kind of says it. It means pretty much that the mind affects the body. And we know this for a fact. And I've been talking a lot about this for this whole discussion. The thing is, sometimes we forget somatopsychic. What does that mean? That means that the body affects the mind. And so if a person has high blood pressure, which can affect, how their brain is working, or they're not getting enough oxygen because they have something called sleep apnea, where when you fall asleep, you actually stop breathing for periods of a time. And, you're not exactly doing as well as you could be in that respect. There are many other conditions. So I want to make it clear. I'm not trying to give an encyclopedic view of all of this, but I just wanted to get your mind going. That if you've had something going on for a long time, you've had anxiety, maybe you've actually had anxiety treated, but it's not going away, that might be an opportunity to talk to your doctor or your healthcare provider and have them further investigate, see what's going on. So, these are just a few things. There's many more things that I could go on about this, but since we do have limited time and I know everybody's time is valuable, I'm going to continue forward. Well, thank you for all of this, Dr. Williams. I understand that there are many different aspects to anxiety. I understand that there are, ways that it's going to impact my daily life, both at work and in other spheres of my life. What on earth do I do about it? All right. So you can talk about it, and I don't just mean casually talking about it, although I personally am a crusader for making these conversations much less taboo. I think destigmatizing things is a wonderful thing, but there is specific therapy, and there are people that are trained to go over different types of talk and behavioral therapies as to how to deal with these things. For social phobias, there's desensitization, which for many people is scary in and of itself because it means, hey, you're going to be exposed to the thing that you don't like, but your body is going to be able to get used to it, and therefore you won't have the physical reaction, and that'll eliminate the anxiety. It works. I know it. Ask me how. In addition to that, there can be things that have happened in the past that you haven't addressed. And there are people that are more specialized in talking about those things. They may be trauma related if negative things have happened. They may simply be things that you need to process from a more intellectual level with someone that is non-judgmental because you don't feel comfortable, or it's been made clear that it's not productive to talk to family and friends about those specific topics and you need it to be confidential. Physical therapies. Okay, so from that standpoint, it's just reminding us that there are things that if they are not under control can directly affect how we're doing with anxiety. If you have medical conditions and there's a recommendation, if your diet needs to change, if you need to get certain tests, if you need to have certain procedures, whatever they are, you certainly should do them. But above and beyond that, there are things that kind of border not just what we call psychotherapy, but they are physical things that can happen. I mentioned trauma. For some people, there's something called EMDR. It basically has to do with eye movements that can literally eliminate a lot of those symptoms the more they're trained on how to do it. Something called biofeedback, literally getting your vital signs and noticing that what you thought you didn't have any control over, you actually do once you get the data. If your job is data-driven, you know what I'm talking about. If you can measure it, even just the act of measuring something can change it. And then, of course, look, I have my bias. I know I'm a doctor, and no, the first thing I do is not automatically prescribe medication. But there is a way to help if it's necessary. There are medications that often merge with treatment for depression, especially with one of the chemicals in our brain that end up in the long run regulating our mood, called serotonin. So if you ever hear a doctor saying, just shorthand, SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, that's what that means. It's a medication that's meant to regulate one of our brain chemicals so that we are able to experience things a little differently physically and emotionally compared to what they were before. I want to make it clear that these are tools in the toolbox. They are not cure-alls. For some people, they do work that way where, okay, I took this and I feel great and I'll just go about my business. Wonderful. I'm glad it was simple for you. For many of us, it's not that simple. It can be more complicated than that. It may be a combination of these things. There are other medications that are for temporary relief of anxiety. The most common category, they're called benzodiazepines, clonazepam, lorazepam, very common ones, alprazolam. I'm not going to go into brand names, but some of you may have heard of them. Some of you may be taking them. That's fine. I'm not judging whatsoever. For some of them, some people have been on them for long periods of time. General recommendation is, if we can help it, we make it as short as possible. Look at the other therapies and try and keep the doses limited because they do have the risk of habit formation, meaning addiction. So we do have to be careful with those, but they certainly are another tool in the toolbox. All right, Doc, I understand that you have an agenda where you're a doctor, so you're going to try and drum up business for yourself, which, by the way, I'm not, because I don't have an outpatient practice. I only work in a hospital. It's okay. None of you have to see me. That's fine. But what if there's something I want to do? What if I want to take action now? I am, I'm pumped up. I'm motivated. I want to do something about anxiety. The very first recommendation that I give to anybody when it comes to anxiety is make sure that you're getting enough sleep and make sure you're getting a regular schedule of sleep. Because the ability for our bodies to recover from the stresses of day-to-day life, and I think especially after the few years that we've all gone through, thanks COVID, we really need to keep that in mind. In terms of things that you can do just on a regular basis, even if you're not experiencing anxiety in the moment, just to regulate things, from an intellectual standpoint, actually writing it out, getting your thoughts out, because once, and when I say it, if you have to type on your phone and do it, if you have to type on a keyboard and do it, so be it. But in all honesty, so far, literature has shown that actually physically using a pencil or pen and putting it to paper is the way to get it out. And sometimes those thoughts that were once just sticking in your head and not going anywhere, once they're on paper, may actually reduce. Okay, and the next side is for all of my people that are, a little judgmental themselves about all of this. When I say embrace your woo-woo side, that's actually not meant as an insult. It is well studied now, and there is no question about it. Mindfulness, meditation, yoga, deep breathing, all of which are direct actions that are actually impacting your most basic functions of your body, be it your movement, your ability to breathe, all of it really directly impacts how much anxiety you're going to have on a day-to-day basis. So is it true that it's going to work in the moment you're having a panic attack? Not likely. I don't want to mislead, but if you do these things often enough and develop your own schedule and system, you'll notice that you'll have reduced panic attacks. You'll notice the intensity decreases, just to give an example. And the fact that for whatever reason, these things were often put to the wayside for way too long was a detriment to society as a whole, because at this point, they definitely have been shown to work. If for whatever reason you say, Doc, you know what, I get your point, but I'm just not about that. Strenuous physical activity, because once again, if you're at a desk all day, hey, what do you know? Actually recreating in a way, I know this may be too philosophical, but in a way you're recreating some of those physical responses that you were supposed to have when you were really feeling you were in danger if you actually do physical exercise, especially cardio and strength training. It's not just one or the other, it's both. That actually can, get some of that, excess energy out in a way that allow your body to rest the way it's supposed to. And then, of course, the one thing, and it's not last because it's least, it's last because I want it to be the last thing I said in this slide, who's in your inner circle? Please have people around you. If you don't, then, develop the professional relationships that are going to be necessary for you, because humans are actually social creatures. We're not designed to be completely alone. I'm not saying that you have to be the life of the party. I'm not saying you have to get to know absolutely everybody in every detail of their life. And as a matter of fact, you probably shouldn't. But the ones that you care about, go ahead and ask them, and actually check in on them as well. This is a mutual thing. That's why I call it an inner circle, not just like an inner, one-way avenue or one-way street. Okay. So I know I've done a lot of talking here, and however anyone feels about this stuff, for some people it may be overwhelming, for some people they may feel energized, for some people they may think like, wow, he didn't tell me anything I didn't already know, but I just wanted to see if there was something different. That's okay. I don't take anything personally. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. I love feedback, and I really do hope that this is helpful to people. I want to remind everyone, though, that you are not alone. And if this was a talk that, like I said, I like to keep it light. I like to keep it energetic, and I want people to have fun. But at the same time, some people may be going through some serious things. You don't have to say anything on this chat. You don't have to say anything for this particular message. But I wanted to give you some resources. Especially since this is the business association. I mean, it's very clear that many employers have what's called an employee assistance program. What that means is that you are covered through HR to have a professional to talk to about the topics that you wish to. And by definition, it's not something that is detrimental or harmful to you or your work in any way. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. It's meant to be a resource so that you're able to do your work better. People don't spend money on these things because they think it looks nice. They do it because it works. If you are truly in a crisis, things can't wait. It's a matter of urgency, of life and limb, or it feels that way, and you simply have nowhere else to turn. Each area, at least, and I'll admit I'll be very focused with this part. Each area in New Jersey, each county, each hospital has crisis lines that you can look up online for your area. Or if you don't remember anything else, and to be honest, if you don't remember anything else from this entire presentation, 988, that's something that didn't exist just a short while ago. And the fact that it does now is a wonderful thing, because it definitely saves lives if you feel like you have nothing else you remember. And I'll add, I didn't put it on the slide, but I'll say it because some people may say like, oh, was it 988 or was it 918 or was it 999? I don't remember. Everybody at this point remembers 911, and they could still direct you to what you need. Okay. And then, of course, shameless plug. I work for RWJBarnabas Health. It's a fantastic system in the state of New Jersey, covering everyone. Don't get me wrong, there are other systems, and I'm not bad-mouthing them. I'm just saying what I know. Our Access Center is a 24/7 hotline that can link a person to whatever resources they need within the mental health system. And that number is there, 1-800-300-0628, 1-800-300-0628. Thank you. That is the end of my slides. And obviously, I know I took up a lot of your time, but that was the point in terms of getting as much information to you as I could about a very broad topic that I remember going on a daily basis for a few months just to go over anxiety during my training. So just to give you perspective, but I really appreciate everyone that stayed on and listened to this, because I think you all matter. I think you're all human beings worthy of dignity and respect. And if for whatever reason you feel like you're not getting that from other people, one of the best things you can do is start to give it to yourself.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. This was an amazing presentation. You hit on a lot of key points. So we did have a lot of questions come in. So I am going to dig right into the questions. Okay, so are CBT, DBT, emo reg still considered best practices for anxiety disorders?
Yes, they are. That's a wonderful question. I appreciate someone who knows about that stuff. So DBT is very specific, especially for people with a lot of impulsivity, a lot of what we call black and white thinking or negative thinking, where if one thing goes wrong, that means that everything is wrong. So that's way more specific, especially when it comes to different personality diagnoses. CBT is still the mainstay. The idea that you have what we call I like to say ABC for antecedent, but the point is you have something that stimulates you, you have a certain immediate thought, and then you have your emotion and behavioral reaction to it. And if you can get that gap in between, the whole point of CBT, which, is incredible. I definitely recommend it. Yes, those are still the mainstays. Absolutely. I'll be honest, there are some people that still do psychoanalysis, psychodynamic, which is much more, you don't have to think Freud. It's not all Freud, but there are many different schools of thought when it comes to this, and they can treat anxiety. But yeah, CBT, DBT. And I'm an Albert Ellis. Rational emotive behavioral therapy was a very specific type and a very specific style. He had quite the mouth on him when he would describe things, so I'm not going to do that. But the point is, yes, those are still definitely the mainstays for treatment.
Okay. Do you have any favorite books or workbooks with dealing with anxiety disorders?
That's a very good question. And to be honest with you, I don't have workbooks. I used to recommend workbooks. The reason why I don't is simply because many of the things that workbooks recommend, while I think they're great things, I think they can help a lot of people, but they give a false sense of security with how people are doing because they're not getting direct feedback. And once again, I'll admit that's my bias. In the sense that it doesn't have to be a mental health professional or a healthcare professional, but the way I look at it, if you're going to use and there are so many guru type of books, if you're going to use any of those books or workbooks, the thing I would say is at least get some feedback from a close person to you. That could be family, that could be a friend, something like that, because otherwise, many of these give the impression like if you do these steps, it's automatic that it's working. And that's been my experience. So I'm very hesitant to recommend specific workbooks or books right now.
Okay. What can you do when you wake up in the middle of the night with anxiety when you remember you didn't return a phone call or an email or something else? How do you calm down and get back to sleep?
Excellent question. Excellent point. If you, as you said, if the person's eyes have been open, meaning, all right, we are now in alert mode, then you have to recognize that your body has actually had the response. If that's the case, you are revved to do something. So do something. So what does that mean? No, that doesn't mean interrupt and make that call if you know it's a time period where the person's going to be sleeping. That's not the time to do it. But getting out of bed, taking a walk, I don't know, everybody knows their own environment. If it's walking down the hallway, if you're upstairs, walking downstairs, getting a glass of water, glass of warm milk, walking back upstairs afterwards. If you need to use the restroom, so be it, that's fine. Because even that process can help reestablish that you are going to now, you've responded now physically for the intensity, and now you're going to look to dial it back down. And you can use those other techniques if you do deep breathing, if you do meditation. It's okay to do those things and then lay back down. The other thing I would say, if you can avoid it, and I don't want anybody hurt, if you have to turn the lights on to walk somewhere, turn them on. But I'm saying if you can at least reestablish that it's a dark environment again, then that's a good thing to do. Because once you have your own physical response to your thought, and then you get the external factor of light being on, then you're going to think it's daytime and your body's saying, oh, okay, cool, it's time to wake up, time to get up. Like you don't really want to do that. You want to limit the response as much as you can. So if you can limit it to 5-10 minutes, whatever your sleep routine. If everybody can hear me again. Sorry.
You're good. We got
okay,
you.
Whatever your sleep routine is, and everybody should have a sleep routine, turning off devices, no TV, if you like white noise or whatever, if you do that again and you need to do that again, then do it again. That's the best thing you could do in the moment.
Okay, great. And then unfortunately, we have time for one more question. So what can I do if my anxiety is causing me to be late to work? Hold on. Okay, so what type of plan can I have set up for me at work for this?
Okay. So I actually am going to make myself a liar. What do I mean? There is one book I would recommend for something like that. The name of the book is it's not a purely psychology or psychiatry book, but it's in the realm, and it's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Basically, you have to establish a routine independent of what your thoughts are in the moment, because that's going to be the limit to anything you do. If the only thing that's driving you to do something is your own thoughts and motivation at the time, then there's going to be a ceiling on it. There's going to be a limit to it. And you're going to find yourself trying to pull yourself or drag yourself to do things, or conversely, if you want to think the other way, you feel like you're being pushed even when you don't have the actual effort or energy. You're going to need to.
You're still there. Are you there? Dr. Williams.
Hi, here we go.
This
There
was
we
not
go.
part of the original plan. What I was getting at, and that really was like just a technical thing. It says it doesn't recognize my camera right in the middle of things. What I was getting at is creating small changes before, the anxiety hits or anything like that is really important. And the more you can do ahead of time, the better. When it comes to work, it depends on what it is that you need to do in the morning. The less you have to do in the morning, the better. So if you get into the routine of, let's say, well, I never know what I'm going to wear. Well, actually, it's going to be, and none of this is easy. Like it sounds simple, but it's not easy. If you actually write out all the things that you usually do, and then just pick ones where you say, okay, I don't have to do this in the morning. Can I do this some other time? And limit what you're actually doing in the morning. Can you put your clothes out ahead of time? Can you, prepare if you take your lunch to work? Can you prepare that ahead of time? I always stop and pick up such and such, okay, is that something that rather than stopping along the way and doing it, can you do that at home? There are going to be things that, invoke change, and you don't have to do them all at once. If it's a matter of, and I know I sound like a broken record with this, if it's a matter of sleep, then maybe it's a matter of when do you go to sleep to wake up to have enough time so that you're not feeling rushed. There's a lot of major decisions ultimately that need to be changed. That type of change can also come from what you consider to be important. In other words, is that a part of who you are, or is that simply a role you're filling because someone else told you had to do that? If I'm a person that, I'll give an example for myself. I don't work out as much as I would have liked to. So I actually had to say to myself, well, I'm an athlete. Now, am I ever going to be in the Olympics? No. But it is true that, well, if I'm an athlete, what do athletes do to prepare? Well, they put out their work clothes. They put out their workout clothes in the morning. Oh, so why are my sneakers by my bed? Well, because I know once I put my sneakers on, I'm going to do this. I may not work out as hard as I want to, but I am going to do something because it's there. So if you can give yourself as many triggers and hints as to what it is that you want to accomplish, and have the mindset that that actually is who you are, rather than the imposter syndrome of someone you're pretending to be, it can go a long way. And I apologize. I know there's a lot more that can be said with that, but that's also why I'm recommending that book.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. Okay, so that is all the time that we have today. Don't forget, you'll be receiving a recording of today's program by Monday, May 8th. I hope you'll join us for our Work and Wellness, Stress, Mental Health, and You on May 16th. To register, visit our website at njbia.org. So until next time, for Dr. Williams of RWJ, this is Danielle Wink. Thank you for being with us today, and wishing you a great afternoon. Thank you again, everyone.